Hi, and good morning. My name is Eathen H. So over the past 20 years, combat sports it's a sport that has been more popularized as time has gone by. In the 80s, combat sports really weren't big until things like Jackie Chan and Karate Kid were becoming more mainstream, and more people started participating in karate. And after people started participating in karate, uh, all the other subcategories of combat sports, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, kickboxing, things like that, they just started to, like go in them more because it was becoming more interesting. So this is a really new sport. And over these past 20 years, it has also mainly been men. And the reason that I bring this up is my topic today will be about the transgender community being involved in this sport. And back to my point of only men, the community hasn't really dealt with anything other than men. And within these past 15 years, women as well. So it's a challenge to incorporate the transgender community. And this sport has become way more violent over time. You are now allowed to use elbows and knees in basically every MMA promoter. Um, the reason that is more violent is the elbows and knees, when giving a blow, it can be really devastating just because the bone structure of those bones, specifically the elbow, it acts as a sharp blade of when you strike down on someone, it's easily cutting the skin. And the knee is just a really big bone, and that obviously speaks for itself. And the sport has become more popular over the years as things like UFC, K1, and other organizations like that have been funded and promoted more and more. The sport is becoming more mainstream. All right, so the LGBTQ intro. This community has become involved within these past 15 years, and there was only really a surge of involvement after the first openly trans fighter, Fallon Fox, who was biologically born as a male but is now transgender as a female, had joined the UFC as a male and fought for a male for 4 fights, won 2 of those fights, and then went through its transition and is now a proud female and now has had 6 other fights in the female division in the UFC, winning all 6 of those fights. Now, the LGBTQ community started pushing for more integration after this happened. But here's the problem. It's not safe to have a biologically born male who is now transgender as a female fight a female. Men have very different builds from women, so that's also a main problem. And at the end of the day, it is just not fair competition. Here's the biological view of it. Men are usually biologically stronger. They have the ability to put on more muscle and to grow taller and gain more weight at a faster pace than women do. And men have denser bones than women. The reason this is important is because when you are, for example, punching someone, if you have a stronger bone density, you're able to hit them at a higher velocity than you would with nimbler bones, I guess you could say. And men just have an overall bigger build. If you look in the picture, the men's shoulders on the left are wider than the women's, and the big thing to me is the hips. If you look at the hips, you can see in the women's there's this big open area, right? But in the men's, the area is smaller. And the difference this makes is when you throw your waist into a kick, the men can generate a lot more power just because the build and structure of their waist and pelvis compared to the woman's. But here's the solution. If you create a brand new league for trans people, it will solve all of these problems. And also, if you have multiple of the current combat sports leagues donate money to this cause and show their support, the community won't have any backlash, and it'll be the safest and best way to go about doing this. But here's the opposition. The LGBT community could become offended from this. You could say they would see it as a form of segregation. So they could become offended from this form of quote unquote segregation. But the rebuttal to that is it's biologically and factually not safe for a natural born female to become trans and then fight a male. It just has too many problems. They could get TBI. And at the end of the day, it's just not a fair competition. And the only way to solving that is, once again, creating this new league. Are there any questions?
Yes, I do have 2 questions for you. First question, what evidence did you gather that you didn't use, and then why'd you choose not to use it?
I gathered a lot of stuff mainly for my counterclaim, where there was multiple people who were working in the, for example, UFC. There were multiple people working in the UFC who were saying certain things about this topic, but in an uneducated and slanderous way, and it was hurting many of these people, including Fallon Fox, the fighter that I brought up. I chose not to use this evidence because I felt like it just wasn't needed in the overall picture of people just slandering other people for no reason, uh, because it was the comments that were made were really not school appropriate, and I just didn't think it would be the best for the PowerPoint.
Okay. And then the next question I have for you is, what advice would you have for other researchers that consider this topic?
I would definitely say don't be scared, because going into this, I was scared of saying the wrong thing or looking in the wrong places and becoming biased. But I would say don't be scared. Just dive into it. Talk to people. I talked to a couple uh, transgender folks that I know, asking their opinions on whether things I say could be seen as offensive, because I wouldn't want to be seen like that at all. I just want to, get the safest way for this to happen.